in our research paper component in our tab here, right? So you should have already went through and chosen a topic for your paper, and most of you already did, and you noted that on the board. So you've read through that work, and I strongly encourage you, you really do have to engage very closely, very intimately with that primary source. So you should you should have read James Baldwin, Sonny's Blues, if that's what you've chosen. You should have read it not once, not twice, but ideally 3 times, and really started to think about what kind of thesis direction. Do I want to explore Harlem itself, the way Baldwin portrays it with great antagonism? Do I want to explore the title, Sonny's Blues, which is a kind of, double entendre? Sonny is both the sun, the light, and the inheritor, and his music is both pain and also a particularly African American form of expression. Kafka's Metamorphosis. I should have read that story, and really I'm thinking a lot about what is Kafka doing with this absurd portrayal of Gregor. Am I going to explore the style that he writes it in? It's a very realistic style for such an absurd scenario. Am I going to look at the dynamics of what Gregor's transformation actually means? What do we think Kafka is suggesting through this transformation, through this metamorphosis? Am I going to look at the relationship between Gregor and Greet in the story? Maybe the way his sister's attitude changes. So I need to really think about what kind of thesis direction I want to explore, and that is true for Frost's poetry, if you've chosen Frost, or Dickinson's poetry, T.S. Eliot, William Blake, or August Wilson, or Susan Glaspell. So working with your primary source, it's really important that you have a good handle on that material before you go out and you find secondary source material. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to the library homepage, and you're going to go to the library resources. Okay, so anytime that you are just setting out to explore a work, I've read it, I've engaged with it, I don't know anything about Kafka, so the first thing I might want to do is go into a reference source. Now, a reference source, probably most of you are familiar with Wikipedia. That's an example of a kind of reference source, but the one we're using in our library is a little bit more reliable. It's not crowdsourced like Wikipedia is. It's edited, so you're going to go into articles and databases. And we've already looked at a reference source earlier in the semester. You're going to go into Gale, and you're going to look at the Gale Reference Library. And you'll notice, Reference Library, it's an encyclopedia. And we're going to look at literature. You'll have to log in with your credentials. So you can look right here through literature. All of these are reference sources, okay? And you're only going to use one because really that's all you need for a reference. I just need some factual information about the story, maybe a sense of context of when it was written. So the one that I usually suggest is this short stories for students, drama for students, epics. It's the For Student series. Literary movements for students. If you wanted to look at, the Metamorphosis as an existential work, you could maybe look through literary themes. So short stories for students, if you're doing a short story, which many of you are, so we would click on here, or poetry for students, and you can search right within that. So I'm going to use Sonny's Blues as our example, and it comes up right here. Okay, you're going to click on the title, and you'll see that this reference source gives me a really good, gives me a short author biography of James Baldwin. I have a plot summary. I have a little bit about the characters in the story, some of the themes in the story, topics for further study. So this is a really good place to get an idea about a thesis direction. Narrative point of view, maybe that's important. Maybe that's something I really didn't consider. The catharsis and what that is. Bebop, the kind of jazz influence that we're looking at in the story. So this is a good place to just get some factual background information about the author and about the story itself. And this you're going to list on your Works Cited page as a works referenced. Okay, you're not going to actually cite this because what you're going to get from here is factual information, and factual information doesn't belong to anyone. It is, you can use it as common knowledge in your paper. You do want to put at the end of your paper a works referenced, and I'll show you that a little bit later. So sometimes we do get into critical overview here. Now, in this section, you are getting a little bit more, like notice Jennifer Hicks. This is a critical interpretation. Not the best criticism for your paper. These are short little entries. So I would probably avoid, you can read through this, but usually you can find any of these articles in the other databases. You can see these are excerpts. Usually these are excerpted ideas. So you want to use this for reference, use it for background, use it to get a sense of thesis direction. It'll really help you take stock of the work. Okay. Okay,